beauty that surrounds us, that is far beyond our knowing. From the breezes through the pines that set the desert grasses blowing, for the love that reaches out across the grand expansive west and connects us all as one. Oh, we are blessed. Oh, we are blessed. For the splendor of the seasons, as our planet keeps on turning, from the snowdrifts in the mountains to the desert hot and burning, for the wonder of the earth that reaches out across the west and connects us all as one. Oh, we are blessed. Oh, we are blessed. Share we now our deeper purpose, dreams of what tomorrow brings, like the fire of our chalice, lift us up and give us wings. For the passions that define us and sustain our deepest being, for the open minds and hearts that open up our way of seeing, for the vision that's inspired by our home here in the West and connects us all as one. Oh, we are blessed. Oh, we are blessed. Oh, we are blessed. Oh, we are blessed.
This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to its life, we affirm our lives within it.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
At one of our board meetings a few years ago, Elizabeth High, who was our UUCGV president at the time, asked us to take a few minutes to go around the circle and give a 1 or 2 sentence check-in as to how we were doing. And when it was my turn, I remember saying that I was groundedly scattered in a joyful sort of way. And I still really like this phrase as a way to describe myself on a regular basis. And I remember that particular week, actually it was 2020 in February, not March. So it was a busy week with a lot going on, and we were hosting a Grand Valley Interfaith Network event where we were talking about our stories and how we as a community can come together and listen to each other. And we were expecting about 150 or 200 people to be here in the sanctuary. And There were so many moving parts, and yet in the midst of it all, I took a moment to realize that in the midst of all of that chaos, I was able to feel calm, centered, and joyful. And so let's take a closer look at that statement. So groundedly scattered in a joyful sort of way. So grounded. I was feeling grounded. There was a lot going on, but I knew what we were doing and I knew why. Because of our 7 UU principles right here on our wall and our own UUCGV mission statement, it was a wonderful feeling to know that our actions associated with the event we were putting together were in alignment with our deep meaning and purpose. So I was grounded because what we were doing was rooted in something much deeper than just me. Putting into practice and living into the acknowledgement of the inherent worth and dignity of every human being created a rootedness that gave the evening and the actions associated with it purpose. Scattered. There were so many little details needed to make the evening come together, while at the same time dealing with all of the other elements of the day-to-day mechanics and functioning of the church and family and everything going on in the world. So I was on some level doing an enormous amount of multitasking in my head. And there were so many thoughts and ideas and tasks swirling around, to-do lists and checklists. I hadn't yet been able to bring the thoughts into the conscious acknowledgement of them, which turns into clear, coherent thinking. And so I knew that my thoughts were still a little scattered as they had not yet coalesced into a coherent stream of consciousness. In a joyful sort of way, I knew it was all going to be okay because deep in my emotional center, I could tell that the emotions that were leading the way were feelings of joy, gratitude, and love. So my emotions were centered. And because of the grounding of purpose and the centered emotions of joy, gratitude, and love, I knew that the thoughts would eventually stop swirling and make their way into my consciousness, my conscious mind, which I could then direct into coherent action. But if you stop and think about it, that's a lot going on in the life of one person, right? And this is happening to all of us all the time. So the key is learning how to understand, recognize, and work with the various aspects of ourselves. Without the conscious awareness that our emotions are not our thoughts and are not even expressed in the same part of our body, we are at the mercy of all of this energy swirling all over the place with no guidance or direction. But when we can get the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings to work together as a unified whole, so to speak, we end up with the capacity to do extremely important and powerful things, such as put on a community event that attracts so many people, it becomes almost standing room only. And I could still say that and do that in 2019. Probably wouldn't get away with that today in 2021. But I want to talk a little bit today about how all of this happens and works together. So the theme for December is opening to joy. And as I reflect on the concept of joy this month, I think it's important to note that joy is not the same thing as happiness. So I'm going to say that again and just let you think about that a little bit. Joy is not the same thing as happiness. Just like being kind is not the same thing as being nice. Joy is an inner state of being. You can be in a very difficult situation and still be joyful. In the Spiritual Arts Institute, Dimitri occasionally talks about, in the midst of a desperate situation, you are not always despairing. He says, happiness is conditional. Joy is a perpetual state of the spirit. You can be in the worst situation, but if you are in that state of spirit, you are not going to feel that misery because it is not a state in your life. And I feel like Barbara Martin explains this in a very helpful way in her reference to talking about 12 spiritual attributes that we have, and joy is one of them. And she writes, to truly understand these 12 truths, you must learn to perceive and use them through your spiritual knowing. Human understanding must give way to God comprehension. For example, she says, one of the 12 attributes of spirit is joy, true spiritual joy. The very word is exciting and uplifting, yet we often confuse joy with happiness. Joy is of the spirit. Happiness is part of our human experience. Why, she says? Because happiness is conditional. Something has to make us happy. How many people say they are looking for happiness, that they just want to be happy? Well, the intended desire is actually misleading. In the spiritual sense, happiness is an illusion. What makes us happy one minute can make us sad the next. If we have the things we want, we are happy. If we don't, we are sad or despondent. These things, she says, are not fruits of the spirit. Joy, on the other hand, is not dependent on outside conditions. Joy is a perpetual condition of the spirit. We partake of this joyful state when we are of the spirit ourselves. When you are in your true joy state, you can be joyful even when physical conditions are terrible. You can express joy at any time because you can always tap into your spiritual life. The spiritual life, the energy of the world, however you want to think of it, the God concept, divine, is not conditional. It just is. And so she says, this is why many people find their spiritual selves through great struggle and strife, because at that moment of struggle, the illusionary pleasures of the personality have been temporarily stripped away, and the soul can better recognize the spiritual promptings. So in essence, I think what she's saying is that joy comes from within. Happiness is more external. And if we are just trying to be happy, we might have those feelings or those emotions, but it's not the sustaining inner sense of peace and well-being that we get with joy. And so the question for me then becomes, how do I integrate this inner knowing into action in my life? How do I begin to live out my life of spirit as opposed to my human personality, which in so many respects really is conditional? What is the purpose of doing any of this work, this flowing of energy, if it doesn't make a difference in our lived expression? And I've been thinking about this, and I shared this story a while ago, but many of you probably haven't heard it. But a few years ago, I was talking with one of my chaplain friends about that occasional disconnect that I have, and I'm sure most of us as caring human beings have, is how can I be having a sense of inner peace and even a sense of joy when there is so much pain in the world? What do I do with that? And she gave me a very wonderful and simple answer. She said, just go be in the world. Just go be in the world. There's nothing to actually do. And then she told me the story, and I've shared it with you, about how this was a few years ago now, that there was a shooting at a business here in Grand Junction that involved the police, and it was a police-related suicide. And it actually involved one of her son's co-workers while they were at work. And most of the kids that were I call them kids, young adults that were working at that business were in their early 20s, just out of high school, first year in college, and they were all kind of in shock. And she, as a mother, didn't really know what to do when he called, but she knew she needed to go and be there. So she went to the pizza place, and she sat down on a bench, and she just quietly sat there. She didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She just sat there. And his friends would come in with anger or ready to fight. They were kind of in shock, and they were having all of these emotions. And she would just look at them and be still. And she would say, come sit down. You're angry right now. Don't do what you're about to do. And one at a time, these young adults around her, many of whom didn't have the life skills yet to know or understand how to interact in times of deep stress, would come and just sit next to her. And she simply brought herself and her calm presence and sat in the midst of chaos. Eventually, they all calmed down. Most people would not consider that, being in the middle of that situation, a place where you could experience joy. And I don't know that she would say that she was experiencing joy in that moment. I know she wouldn't say that she was experiencing happiness. But if joy can be a sense of inner calm and deep peace and well-being, then indeed, while she was sitting there in that state, she very well may have been able to be staying in a sense of joy, even as the chaos of the world revolved around her. And so, can there be a sense of inner peace and grounding and safety and joy in the midst of hurt and fear and pain? I believe that there can, but it happens not from without, it has to happen from within, from that inner state of well-being, knowing that there is always something so much larger than just us with us, whether it's principles or the history of a movement, or just knowing that millions of people are with you. It's always larger than just us. And doing that inner work, I believe, might actually allow for a state of joy to be experienced in the midst of chaos. And so I know this sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes living into deep spiritual principles is counterintuitive in a world that is, for the most part, ruled by our human personalities. So for those of us who are doers, I'm not saying don't go out and don't do anything, but what I am saying is that we must understand that what we do needs to come from that inner place of being. It's an inner change within us that results in external change. There can be a state of joy in the midst of pollution. There can be an inner joy in the chaos of elections. There can be an inner state of joy in the middle of a pandemic. There can be joy in the middle of everything that is human if we allow ourselves to understand that what is human and what is all around us is not ultimately what is real or what is mattering. And so the truth is, in this year 2021, when everything still seems chaotic and we're still in a pandemic and we still are uncertain with the systems around us and the political structure, I believe that the paradigm change of learning to let go of what's outside of us and hold deeply what is inside of us is what can change and save the world. And so the truth is, we have to do the inner work, but we do that inner work so that it can become an outward expression. And when we are making the changes from the inside out, they become sustainable in a way that is no longer fleeting. And I believe that this work that I'm talking about, this inner work, is what happens when we then are able to transform happiness into pure joy. And so I'm going to end today with a quote by Tagore. He says, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." I'm going to say that one more time. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. Truly, it all blends together until it becomes one. And out of this sense of joy and inner well-being, sometimes it's fun to just let the music flow and let ourselves dance. So we're going to close today with Let It Be a Dance.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Go your way in peace. Wander as you pray. Blessed is the path you take. May love guide you on your way.